say nothing's ever promised tomorrow today. But we're fine.
What's good, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Mally Braid TV. I know y'all seen that thumbnail. The most dangerous prison ever. Ever. And 36 years solitary confinement. I know y'all want to know about it, so let's get into it. Thomas Edward Silverstein, born February 4th, 1952, in Long Beach, California. As a kid, Thomas was awkward and shy. He was often bullied in the middle-class neighborhood that he grew up in. And as a kid, he had one of them tough type moms that when you came home after you got your ass bullied, she pretty much told you, if you get bullied again and you come home and didn't do nothing about it, I'm going to whoop your ass. So at a young age, Thomas Silverstein understood violence was pretty much the answer to his problems. And that pretty much later on defines this man's life. At an early age, he was sentenced to California Youth Authority Reformatory for being just a badass kid. He stayed there for a little while. Eventually, he got out. Then, in 1966, when he was 19 years old, he was sent to San Quentin prison for an armed robbery. He's starting off young. He then paroled 4 years later. You know, most armed robbery people don't. He paroled 4 years later at 23, but was arrested soon after with his dad and his cousin for 3 armed robberies, because at this point, Thomas Silverstein had a heroin problem. And in order to keep up his addiction, you know, the shit's not cheap, he had to go do what he had to do. And it ended up leading him to 15 years in prison. And he was sent to Leavenworth, Kansas at 25 years old at the start of his 15-year bid. At Leavenworth, Thomas Silverstein came across the Brand, a.k.a. the Aryan Brotherhood, and eventually he joined up. At 28 years old in 1980, Thomas was convicted of killing another inmate by the name of Danny Atwell, a fellow inmate who was also a member of the ABs, or the Brand, Aryan Brotherhood, who refused to be a runner for the heroin that was being moved inside the prisons. Apparently, the high-ranking members of the Aryan Brotherhood had told Danny, you know, your next contact visit that you get, make your girlfriend bring heroin in, you take it and bring it back so we can make money inside the prison. Of course, old boy was like, I'm not doing that. So, seeing how Thomas Silverstein had just joined the Aryan Brotherhood, he was willing to do pretty much anything to get his name and his point across. So he killed Danny Atwell for refusing to be a drug mule, pretty much. He was sentenced to life in prison and transferred to the U.S. Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. 5 years later, somehow it got overturned in 1985 because the jailhouse informants who were telling on him perjured themselves on stand, which means they got on the stand and lied and got caught in it. So luckily he got away with a murder that he did do. At this prison, Thomas was in the control unit, aka solitary confinement. 1 year after the accused murder of Danny Atwell, Thomas was accused of murdering Robert Chappelle, another fellow inmate and a member of the DC Blacks. Thomas Silverstein received a second life sentence for this killing of Robert Chappelle. And while he was on trial for the killing of a black inmate, one of the DC Blacks, the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, decides to pull an asshole move and send the national leader of the DC Blacks to the same control unit, prison, 2 or 3 doors down from the suspected killer of his homeboy, Thomas Silverstein. So now they brought this guy in pretty much who is hell-bent on avenging the murder of his fellow gang member, you know what I'm saying? So while he's there, he attempted to kill Thomas Silverstein 2 times and failed both times. It got to the point that even the guards knew that Cadillac, the leader of the DC Blacks, was trying his damnedest to kill Thomas Silverstein. Nobody did anything to try to separate the two. So pretty much everybody knew that the prisoners wanted one or the other to kill each other. Well, they got what they wanted. Eventually, Cadillac was killed with another man. Clayton Fountain and Thomas Silverstein stabbed this man 67 times. After they stabbed this man 67 times to the point he is just holes all in him, they drag his body back and forth up the tier in front of all the prisoners that are watching to pretty much make a point. Do not play with us, and this is going to happen to you. After this, he received another life sentence. On October 22nd, 1983, Thomas Silverstein killed corrections officer Merle Klutz at USP Marion, United States Penitentiary, Marion, Indiana, where he was at. He did this sneakily. Since he's an Aryan Brotherhood member, he had another Aryan Brotherhood member that was in general population. He ordered him to pretty much crash out, do something dumb to get sent to the control unit. So now you're in the hole 2 or 3 cells down from Thomas. He advised him to swallow a homemade key that he had brought in. So he did what he had to do to get, brought up. And this is back in the day when they had the bars still. There wasn't doors. So you could easily reach to a bar and grab something or contraband or anything from a fellow inmate. So at the time, they walked Thomas Silverstein back and forth to his shower. They watched him. At this time, he didn't like Merle Klutz. They've been getting into it for a long time. He was one of them asshole corrections officers that just went in your room when you was gone, stole your shit, threw it away. At this time, Thomas Silverstein was a very, very good drawer because he'd been in solitary confinement for so long. This is what he did to make his mind keep from going dull. And while he was asleep and other times, this officer would come in and blatantly destroy his art and throw it away. For a man that's locked up 24 hours a day, your fuse is this short. So eventually he took the man's life. After this happened, like I said, he walked in. He somehow got Klutz in front of him. While they're walking to the shower, he ran up to a prison cell, put his hands behind his back. Somebody used a homemade key to unlock it, then handed him a shank through the cell. And that's how he jumped on old boy and stabbed him in the neck and killed this correctional officer. After you do this, they're going to make an example out of you, man. They're going to find a way to make your life hell to show you you can't do this shit and get away with it. Killing corrections officers and you think this shit's cool? We got to make an example out of this man so all the other people know you don't do this bullshit and get the fuck away with it. So, after he did this, he was transferred to a high maximum security facility in Atlanta, Georgia, USP Atlanta, where he was placed in solitary confinement, and his security status was no human contact indefinitely. Thomas's cell in solitary confinement in Atlanta was 6 foot by 7 foot. Pretty much the average king-size bed. This was this man's entire universe. He once said he could lie on his back and touch both walls long ways with only his head and his toes, not even extending his arms. He said he could stand in the middle of his cell and touch both walls with his arms extended out. The ceiling was so low the man could touch it, and it had a really hot lamp that just beamed on him 24 hours a day light. They didn't give the man no darkness. These are the conditions he was being held in to be made an example of. He was fed 3 cold meals a day, cold showers. The man was not allowed a watch. The man was not allowed a clock. When he spoke to corrections officers, they intentionally ignored him and would not speak back unless they had to make an order. But as far as like returning language, if he asked something, they wouldn't answer him. After years and years and years of this, it'll mess with your mind. Thomas claimed he never knew what day it was, if it was day, if it was night, because the light was on 24/7 in his cell. He wasn't allowed visits, and he only had one 15-minute phone call once per month. Showers every 3 days, once every 3 days, with cold water. 24 hours a day stuck in a cell with 1 hour of rec time once a week. And this, pretty much outside, but you're inside. There's still bars over your head. There's concrete walls. You can't see grass. You can't see trees. And there's no equipment for you to use because you're deemed dangerous. He said outside where the rec time was, he could only walk 7 steps in either direction because it was so small. 4 years later, in 1987, which must have seemed like an eternity for this man, taking it day by day, Cuban inmates in Atlanta rioted and took over the whole damn prison. They subdued the guards, they took over everything, and in the process, one of the Cubans let loose Thomas Silverstein out of his cell. This is the first freedom this man has had in solitary confinement for 4 years at this point. Thomas had gone to say that if you would have told him it was 10 years, a decade, he would have believed you because he had no track of time and he was so disoriented from constant light, no time, no clocks. Nobody tells him what day it is. They wouldn't let him draw, wouldn't let him read. So this man got out of his cell and he roamed the whole prison the way he wanted to for 7 days and 7 nights until the riot came to a conclusion. The prisons tried to make a deal with the Cubans, like, hey, we'll give you what you guys want if you stop rioting, if you give us what we want. We want Tommy Silverstein. We're scared he's going to kill again. At this point, Silverstein's been in confinement by his cell for over a decade. Perfect behavior, never got in trouble, never spoke back, trying to show he's different. The Cubans happily gave him back, literally threw him over the fence to the authorities, and then the riot was over. Thomas Silverstein claims that he begged the Cubans, please don't take me back. I don't want to go back. Please, I don't want to be solitary no more. Kill me. Take my life. The Cubans laughed. They gave him back. After they gave him back, Thomas Silverstein was shipped once again back to Leavenworth, Kansas, where he served the next 18 years in solitary confinement, no human contact. 18 years. In 2005, now 53 years old, Leavenworth was downgraded to a medium security prison. Thomas Silverstein was moved to ADX Florence, a supermax facility in Colorado, which was built in 1994 in large part due to the killing of Officer Merle Klutz by Thomas Silverstein in USP Marion, Indiana. He was housed in a special cell in a basement away from everybody. And around his cell, they also put concrete. And around the concrete, they put steel to make sure he couldn't whisper or tap his way or talk to anybody. No human contact, remember? His cell was called the Silverstein Suite because it was specially made for him. The way that Merle Klutz got killed was because they had to transport him to a shower. Well, at ADX Florence, the shower is literally 2 feet away from your bed inside your cell. You have a door to your right. You have a door to your left. The right side door is your indoor rec. Another room, 6 foot by 7 foot. You barely can sit out or jump in it with a broken down bicycle. And to your left, you have outside rec, just as small. He said he could take literally 30 steps in a circle and he was back in one spot. His whole entire universe for the next 14 years was right here inside this little ass cell. Eventually, he had heart trouble and he had to go to the hospital. When he went to the hospital, this was his 4th time being out of his cell in over 20 years. Could you imagine locking yourself in your bathroom for a week? This man had not been outside, hell, not even a quarter size of a single wide trailer. He spent 18 years in it. Prison officials claimed that no human contact was a form of torture reserved for those who kill corrections officers. They claimed we couldn't execute Silverstein. At the time, there was no, lethal injection. So we had no choice but to make his life a living hell. Otherwise, inmates would kill guards too. There has to be some sort of supreme punishment. Every convict knows what Tommy Silverstein is going through. We want them to realize if you cross the same line that he did, they will pay a heavy price. Inmates say Thomas Silverstein, or Terrible Tommy is what he was called, was a legend at Leavenworth. Thomas Silverstein's projected release date was November 2nd, 2095. He would ultimately spend his last 14 years on Earth alone with no human contact before he died, May 11th, 2019, at 67 years old, at St. Anthony's Hospital in Colorado. After spending 36 years straight, 23 to 24 hours a day lockdown in a cell, he died from complications of heart surgery. Thomas Edward Silverstein was and is still considered the most dangerous prisoner to ever walk this earth. And he holds the record for the most time spent ever in solitary confinement, the SHU, S-H-U, Special Housing Unit, a.k.a. Control Unit, a.k.a. solitary confinement. Pretty much buried alive, man. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments, do you think he deserved this? What do you think? Could you deal with it? If it was you that made these mistakes, do you think 25 years later, 30 years later, you would still be a threat to society as an old man? Let me know what you guys think, man. I'm very curious. I try to do this with no bias. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for kicking it with me. And until next time, make money, dodge drama, and live life. Please like and subscribe. Salute.
And I heard him say, nothing's ever promised tomorrow today.